Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Weather Guys. I'm meteorologist Mike Ventures. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, meteorologist Sean Braden. How's it going, Big Sean?
We're doing good. Mike and I and Colin, we're going to be missing Colin again this week, but we all made the playoffs in our league this week. There's some big matchups and we both made it. So it's good. And actually I'm playing Mike in another league this week. So we got an exciting week ahead of us.
Welcome to playoff fantasy football. We're looking forward to it. And Sean, you're going down, bro. Like you said, I'm so glad that I snuck into the playoffs with the 6th seed in our league of record. It was a tough grind there, but thankfully one of the weather games that impacted, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really helped me out there. We can get to that in a little while, but
yeah. Because your opponent only scored 88 points or something?
Yeah, he had the Jameis Winston, the Mike Evans, and the Chris Godwin stack against me.
Wow. I was all in on Tampa, and if he listened to our podcast, he may have not done that. But thankfully he did for you.
Yeah, I'm pumped. So I'm glad to be part of the premiere. Now, Colin obviously was the number one seed. He won the point total for the end of the year and the first place seed, so he's the bye this week. So he's taking a break. He gets to hang out, not relax. Me and Sean, we got to do the work here because we're fighting for our lives, as I'm sure many of you guys are as well.
Yeah.
So Sean, let's get into some of let's talk about the weather impacts from last week in our what is known as the whirlwind round.
Yeah, for sure. And this was our most eventful weather week of the entire year. I mean, and it was a heck of a week. And we said this, right? We said all year long, there was a period where we weren't getting a lot of weather. Sundays were maybe some wind, maybe a little bit of rain. We said, hey, listen, as we transition into fall and the winter, we're going to see some of these larger systems impact more games. And we saw that this Sunday. We had 2 extreme games that we issued. That was the Packers at the Giants and then Baltimore
at the 49ers, yeah.
I'm sorry, 49ers at Baltimore for the other extreme. And then we made some last-minute calls on a couple other games that had some pretty bad wind, including Buccaneers in Jacksonville. We had the Oakland-KC game as well that was impacted, and the Jets at Cincy. So an incredibly eventful game, and as we're going to talk about in this round, very impactful weather as well.
Yeah, we upgraded those 3 games to cautions that Sean mentioned. And that's why it's so important to follow us on our social media channels, because when we see these games where there's questionable winds, marginal winds, and the models come in stronger right before game time or during the day of, we're going to upgrade those games. We're going to be active. We're going to answer your questions on social media and Twitter at FFWeatherguys. So if you have any questions about how the weather might impact specific players, we're going to give our best shot there and tell you what we think is going to be or what might not happen from those games.
Yeah, and also the other thing that we're trying to implement here is to get some photos of games where there is weather-relevant conditions that may be impacting gameplay. So if you're ever at a game and maybe it's windy or if it's raining, snowy, we want those photos. We had a couple people send them in this week, and we're posting them on Twitter and Facebook and all our social media accounts and our website. So make sure you get those into us.
Yeah, we had a good pick of Eric Blake and his son there at a sunny Miami Dolphins game, which was probably a great game to watch when the Dolphins upset the Eagles there. So
awesome game. Helped me out fantasy wise, at least.
Yeah.
So Mike, I'm gonna ask you some questions. So we mentioned that this was a really impactful week. And just to kind of take a bird's eye view of some of these impacts, I'm going to ask you some general questions, and then we're going to dig into some of the specific matchups. But if I asked you, of the 10 quarterbacks that were in these relevant games that we've either issued cautions or extremes, so there were 5 games total, so 10 QBs, actually technically 11 because you had Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew in that Jacksonville game. How many do you think threw for over 250 yards?
Well, you would assume, I would think Mahomes would be a slam dunk call there. Jameis Winston probably has a good chance. Even, Sam Darnold at Cincinnati. I already would say right there off the bat, at least 3, if not potentially 4, based off of, I would say, Nick Foles, but I know that he got benched, so I can't go there. But before the week, I would say that. And you also had Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'm going to say 4.
Yeah, I mean, and Aaron Rodgers had 4 TDs, he was lighting up the Giants, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that there is only one QB of the 10 that had 250 yards, and that one QB only had 268 yards. And lo and behold, that one quarterback was famous Jameis Winston,
Yeah.
who had 268 yards, but he also had 0 TDs. He had no interceptions, but this was one of his worst games fantasy-wise of the season as well.
Yeah, Peyton Barber had a big game this week.
Yeah, two TDs for him, and it was all in the running game. And so we'll talk more about that, but just to kind of highlight QB performance, right? And then if I asked you, of all these games, how many wide receivers do you think had over 100 yards?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say probably 2.
Yeah, I mean, you think 10 QBs, right? Of all the wide receivers, you had Jameis Winston, you had Aaron Rodgers go off, you had Lamar Jackson, right? You think that there would be at least maybe, 4, 5, 6 maybe. And there was only 2. And guess who it was? Robbie Anderson with Sam Darnold.
There we go, Robbie.
And Lazard with Aaron Rodgers throwing in the ball. So this was not the Chris Godwins. Yeah. This was not the Mike Evans. This was not the DJ Charks.
No Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill. So these were some, I mean, Robbie Anderson, he's a boomer bust guy at times, but Lazard you weren't expecting. And so just really incredible. And then just overall with point totals, how many games do you think hit their over under?
Yeah, so with all the weather games, I would say probably at least half of them hit the under.
Yeah, actually, all of them. All of them hit the under. All of them hit the under. So there was not one game that either met or went above the over under. So again, when we see these weather impacts, especially we saw extreme wind and extreme rain and precipitation and snow for the Giant Packers game, like this influences point totals.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. So let's transition here and let's start to take a microscope and break down some of these games here, Sean. Yeah. Let's start off with the Giants at Packers. And I think you can, if you're looking at our YouTube channel, you can see me in a jersey, and I'm actually wearing number 12, Aaron Rodgers. And this was because Aaron Rodgers defied weather. He just came out, gunslinger, threw 4 touchdowns, had a great game. He did have a low yardage, but it was unpredictable. He was my bust of the week last week, and he came out and showed me who's boss. He must have heard us and said, you know what, I'm going to prove Ventress wrong.
He did.
Come out here and just own it, and he did. So you know what? I have to tip my hat off to Rodgers. He played a great game. And
he did.
You know what? You know who didn't play a great game? Your boy.
Yes. Somebody on the Giants.
Yeah, pretty much all of them, right? They all played. Yeah. It was a disappointing game on the Giants, and especially Daniel Jones with his 3 interceptions. So.
Yeah, he had 3 interceptions and set up Green Bay to score, I think it was 30 points against them. It was 30?
31 to 13.
31, yeah, it was 31 points against them, and Aaron Rodgers with the 4 TDs. Here's one thing we noticed here. You may say, well, why wasn't Aaron Rodgers impacted? Well, first off, it started snowing pretty hard in that game, but then it lightened up and then didn't pick up toward the end of the game, like in the fourth quarter where it transitioned to more of an icy mix. But the Giants secondary was awful. Yeah. They didn't know how to cover guys. And Aaron Rodgers, in his pinpoint accuracy and the sure-footed receivers, were just making mincemeat out of them. And so in that case, like, that weather more negatively impacted the Giants secondary than it did the Green Bay wide receivers. Now, on the other side of the ball, we saw when the snow was coming down that wide receivers for the Giants were struggling. They were struggling to hold on to the ball. They were struggling seeing it because the visibility was down. Daniel Jones only had 240 yards. He did have 1 TD to Sterling Shepard, but he had 3 interceptions. Yeah, which gave Green Bay more opportunity.
Definitely. I think the biggest bust on my part here was that when I was looking at this game in the models, I was thinking that was going to be heavy precipitation. I was thinking rain. Wasn't hearing much buzz. I think the forecast came in a little bit colder than what models were showing, and that snow, when it happened, it was heavy and it accumulated pretty quickly on the field. I remember seeing some images on Twitter because I was driving from the holiday break back up to Boston, but I was surprised. That was something that really shocked me.
It was really, and they were right on that kind of that rain, snow, ice line. And some colder air did filter in and was able to transition to all snow for them. And
Yeah.
you know what, like this was one thing that I didn't see happening in this game is I expected Aaron Jones and
Yeah.
Williams to get more opportunity. You know,
They didn't need him.
Jones only had 11 carries and Williams had 10.
Yeah.
And this was surprising because the last time we saw this was against Carolina Panthers, and Aaron Jones had 3 TDs. And Mike, I think one thing that you pointed out to me was like, hey, this is all game script at this point where Green Bay knew the Giants were this bad.
Right.
And they, in the secondary, that is, and they attacked it just as they knew Carolina was bad up front with
the running
rushing
yeah.
defense.
Yeah. Rodgers was so great. He didn't need to rely on the running game like we thought they would. He just ended up slinging 40-yard passes to Lazard. I mean, just an unbelievable game out of him. So, is there anything else you want to cover this, or let's move on to the next game?
Yeah, no, let's move on to the other extreme game, and that was the 49ers at Baltimore, which both quarterbacks, both Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jackson here, both threw for Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 165 yards, and then Lamar Jackson only threw for 101, but he did have 101 on the ground as well and a TD on the ground as well, but really low yardage in the air, and it was downpouring for periods here. I was looking at some recent observations during game time, and it was raining heavy, and then it was misty, and then foggy. The visibility was down. It was a mess. Yeah,
I mean, Lamar Jackson, potential MVP winner this year. I mean, he has such a high ceiling. Even in these strong, wet weather games like heavy rain, he's going to rely on his legs, and he's quick and he's agile, and he makes the defense players miss him. So, you know, he had a great game. I think Colin had the 49ers defense as his bust of the week, and I think it came out pretty good. They didn't do all that great, even in a weather event. I think Lamar Jackson is just so good that any defense that go against him, you want to get out of the way. And that includes the one of the best defenses in the league, the New England Patriots. We saw Jackson just turn them into mincemeat. And then the 49ers, he had, it was a closer game. Don't get me wrong, they got a late winning field goal to win it, right? But he still managed to find a way.
Yeah, and I think the big point here as well is that when you have two, at least one, if not two, really good defenses going against each other in really sloppy conditions, it's going to be tough sledding, especially in the passing game. And that's what we saw here. Because on the running game, you had some really good running on both sides of the ball. Like we said, Lamar Jackson had over 100 yards. Yeah. And then Mozart had over 100 yards, 146 yards in a TD.
Oh, what a game for Mozart.
So I don't know how many of you played him out there.
Yeah.
But he killed it.
Back-to-back good games.
The lead catcher for the Baltimore Ravens was Andrews. And Mark Andrews only had 3 catches for 50 yards and 1 TD. So this was kind of a slow play game, a lot of running, not a lot of attempts. Jimmy G only had 15. Lamar Jackson only had 14. Yeah. So this is what we expect in really, really rainy games. You're going to rely more on the legs.
It was a bit of a disappointment for Mark Ingram, who's been playing out of his mind so far, but I think Lamar Jackson made up for that. I mean, Ingram had 15 rushes for 59 yards, caught up 2 passes for 3 yards. So if you were relying on him to, hit that ceiling this week, it did not happen.
So I'm a little bit surprised. I thought he'd maybe get a little more opportunity in the air, but not this week.
All right, let's pivot on, Sean, here to the next game, and these now are entering the cautions. But if there's one last thing you want to say, because it seems like you do.
The only other thing I wanted to say is that, with your big play guys, like we anticipated Deebo Samuel to have a big, that maybe have a bigger game. He's been getting a ton of targets and a lot of volume. He only had 2 catches and fortunately one of them was a longer pass for a TD. Yeah. He only had 2 catches for 41 yards. So again, in these conditions, you got to be careful of those receivers that rely on maybe some of the deeper passes.
Right. I am going against Deebo this upcoming week in our playoffs. I'm hoping he gets his game gets tempered as well. Actually, to bring up one last thing, George Kittle. I started him in our league. Didn't have a great game. I think he's playing with a broken ankle. But maybe that's starting to heal now. So I mean, I guess it was pretty logical if we thought about it now. Like playing with a broken ankle in a wet field, probably going to limit his action.
Yeah.
So,
Did you get his stats? How did he do? How did he perform? I know he
so
didn't do great.
yeah, so I think for me in our league of record and in our half point PPR, he only scored 2.4 points. He had one rush for -3 yards and 4 targets. He only caught 2 of them for 17 yards. Major bust there.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good. And you know what? They're playing New Orleans next week, who's kind of a middle tier. They, they could play some tough defense. So I don't know if I'm playing. I have Samuel in a couple leagues. I don't know if I'm playing them yet.
Okay. Let's go on to our cautions here. Let's
Yeah.
start with the Jets at Cincinnati.
Yeah. And in these games we put in late, and it was windy.
Yeah, these were all win games, by the way.
We're talking and we'll start with the Jets at Cincinnati. Sustained winds 15 to 22 miles an hour with gusts of 30 plus miles an hour for the duration of the game. Sam Darnold, who I tried to put out because I did some research on him and I was looking at some wind data, and he does not perform well in the wind, and that showed this week. Only 239 yards, no TDs, no interceptions. And then you had Andy Dalton coming back, and he 243 yards with 1 TD and no interception. So between both quarterbacks, 1 TD. And again, the only really relevant wide receiver here was Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
I mean, as you'd maybe expect, Cincinnati has kind of a depleted wide receiver core here with AJ Green out. But this game was, it was mainly on the ground. Mixon had a TD, but even the running game was kind of a little bit lackluster. So this was not all that exciting of a game overall. And what we're noticing in these windy games is they're not able to complete these long passes. They got to keep the ball shorter, so the yards per completion, yards per catch is less, and the defenders could get a better pickup on it because the ball gets held up in the air. So the cornerbacks, safeties, whoever it may be, have a better chance of getting to that ball and knocking it down to keep completions down a little bit lower.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty disappointing game for Jamison Crowder. I think he had over 7 targets and only got 2 of them for a couple of yards. And then big disappointment game out of Le'Veon Bell, right? You drafted this guy to be your stud running back, and he's not been bad, but he's just the mid-pack running back. He only had 10 rush attempts in this game for 32 yards. And you know what? I'm a Jets fan. I was pumped to have Le'Veon Bell as the Jets, but I'm just worried now. He's just not the same running back as he was on the Steelers.
No, and then the Jets only scored 6 points.
Yeah,
in this game.
Brutal.
I mean, and he did have 4 catches for 35 yards, but that's not saving your day with Le'Veon Bell, who is probably a first-round draft pick, maybe second-round draft pick for you. So it was tough sledding for him. So yeah, just not a lot of real relevant fantasy production here on either side of the ball. But Cincinnati did come away with the win. I
got to be honest, man. As a Jets fan, I am disappointed.
Yeah, how did you feel about that game? Like, what was running through your head when you saw the Jets losing to Cincinnati?
So
how did that make you feel?
It brought up the same feelings of when Miami beat the Jets when they were defeated. Literally, like.
So let me ask you: would you have rather, because Aaron Rodgers was your bust of the week, would you rather have had Aaron Rodgers bust, or would you rather have had the Jets win and have like Sam Darnold go off and Le'Veon Bell go off? What option would you have taken?
Honestly, at this point, I want the better draft pick. So I was rooting for the Jets to not do well, just because they find enough to become a 500 type of team and just screw themselves every year. So
that is the Jets.
Anyway, let's not sit on this Jets saga because I can sit there and cry river all night. Let's move on to our next game, and this was Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, and this was our big QB performance of all these weather events, and I say that sarcastically because Jameis Winston, again, only had 268 yards, 0 TDs, 0 interceptions. But let me tell you, that's a hell of a lot better than what Nick Foles did, which was 7 for 14 for 93 yards and an interception and got him benched.
Yeah,
Gardner Minshew.
It is Minshew mania time again. Bring up the mustache.
And I'm excited because DJ Chark thrives off of Minshew. I'm playing him this week in a tough matchup against the Chargers, but I got to play him with Mr. America out there, with Captain America out there. But this game was nuts. I mean, we're talking gusts 35 to 45 miles an hour for this game. I mean, the wind was whipping, and
low-grade tropical storm.
Yeah, I mean, and Mike Evans was struggling. I mean, everybody on that team was struggling to get targets and get in the end zone. Barber was the big beneficiary here, Peyton Barber with 2 TDs.
Oh, disappointment for Ronald Jones. Did you hear why he was benched? He missed a block.
Why was he benched?
Ronald Jones missed a block early on in the game in coverage.
I did hear about, yes.
And he just got benched. That man has he's just no leash there. And everyone thought he was going to be this great running back, and all of a sudden now just freaking Barber just keeps doing it. I think he's probably one of the most annoying fantasy football players.
Bruce Arians for you.
Yeah.
No. Yes. Yeah. Bruce Arians. I'm sorry. Yeah. Bruce Arians. Sometimes he's got that short leash mentality. Yeah. I mean, you had Westbrook. If you played Westbrook, I mean, he got you 60 yards in a TD, but other than that, not really much to talk about here other than Barber and maybe Westbrook. It was another game that was heavily influenced by wind. And again, we saw a deep threat in DJ Chark only have 2 catches for 47 yards. That was only after Gardner Minshew came in. So again, that talk with the wind.
Yeah.
If you have these, outside receivers that are relying on those big plays, you can't count on that in these weather events.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish up here, Sean, and we'll focus here on the Oakland Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and the same story, different game. We had around 25 mile an hour sustained winds, gusts up to 30 to 40 miles an hour. And guess David Carr and Patrick Mahomes.
Oh.
People were looking at maybe even streaming Derek Carr.
Yeah.
He got you 222 yards, a TD, and 2 interceptions. And Mahomes, 175 yards, a TD, and no interceptions. So
he did save his game with a rushing touchdown, though.
He did. That's true. Through the air, he just wasn't normally as productive. He only had 15 attempts. He was only about 50%.
Yeah, this was a game where the Chiefs had just one pass of over 20 yards, despite coming into this leading the league in that category. So I think we saw 3 different Kansas City Chiefs actually rush for a touchdown. One of those was Mahomes, but we saw 2 separate running backs there. So, and I think the one reception touchdown was to Darrell Williams before he hurt himself, right? So
yeah, I mean, and Thompson got a TD as well, but a lot of the damage here was done on the ground. They scored 40 points, but a lot of it was kind of the ground and pound game.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce was the leader in that game with 5 catches for 90. Tyreek Hill only had 55 yards. One player I did forget to mention in our 100-plus club, because I was focusing on wide receivers, is Darren Waller, who came to life in this game as a safety valve. He had 7 catches for 100 yards. But again, other than that, this game, it was mostly, on the ground and more of a defensive game at times as well.
Yeah, the one thing I want to mention, the kicking game seemed to be limited here. There wasn't that many attempts, but both kickers did pretty well. I mean, Butker, he had, 5 out of 5 field goals, and he did have a 50-plus yard field goal. So, I mean, was able to overcome that win. So that was he
must have been going with the win. If he hit a 50-plus into 30-mile-an-hour winds, he must have had the win at his back.
That's a good point. I'm not actually sure which direction the wind was coming in and how that was relative to the field goal. So it's a good point.
Yeah, because we've seen other games where winds have been whipping and the weather's been bad and field goal kickers have struggled. And like field goal kickers in general are notoriously one of the players that are hindered most by weather like this. So I don't know. Well, good for him, because some people were debating playing him or not.
Well, I need Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Kelce. I need all these guys to come back to life here, because Mahomes has had some pretty lackluster weeks as of late, and I need this Kansas City offense to churn it out here against the New England Patriots this week. So, but luckily, there's going to be no weather here for them to really be.
But how confident do you feel about Kansas City playing them at home?
I don't know.
I should say at Patriots.
Patriots. So I just have a feeling the Patriots are close to crumbling. I think their defense did amazing. They have a strong defense, but I think they were overinflated with their weak schedule. Now they're getting into some of these tougher matchups with no weather at hand. I think Kansas City is going to have a chance to win this game, and I think it's going to be on the back of Mahomes.
It could happen. I feel like every time I think that, though, Bill Belichick kind of figures things out somehow, some way.
Yeah.
We've thought that about Brady too. Oh, he's had some bad games. He's fallen off, and then boom, 350-yard, 3 TD game. It's hard to predict with them, but
yeah, it is. All right, let's move on and actually, let's play on that prediction component and talk about the upcoming weather here. So this is our weather impact game table for week 14. And you can see here that there's a lot of greens here, right? A lot of nuns. But if you were to look at the weather type, we do have these different games that are highlighted with some wind. These are the games that we're going to be paying attention to as possible games that we will upgrade or not as on Sunday or Saturday, depending on how we see it fit. So make sure to follow that. But we do have a game here with a caution flag, and that's the Giants at the Eagles. So before we get into that game here, we are going to move into our forecast and talk about what's going on. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sean, and we're going to start off with our precipitation and mean sea level pressure maps.
Yeah, and so there is, and I'm just looking at Chicago weather, and we're going to be really cold next week, and that is because we have a trough that's going to be building into the West Coast. And what that's going to do is actually on Sunday may bring some scattered showers for some of our West Coast games. Right now, we don't anticipate that to have any major impacts, but we are looking at the Oakland game potentially having, I think they're playing Titans. Titans at Oakland that may be getting some showers around game time. And then also the Rams game as well may have some showers. Right now, it doesn't look substantial enough to have any fantasy impacts, but something definitely to keep an eye on. Now, what you're going to see is on the right part of your screen, you're going to see these lines. We call those isobars. And you'll see that they're getting kind of really tight together. And this is a developing cyclone. And typically when you have areas of low pressure travel over a mountain range, in this case, the Rocky Mountains, we have what we call lee-side cyclogenesis. So we talked about this last week, and essentially these mountains act in a way to help spin up storms and help them form. So what we're going to be doing is on Sunday, we're actually going to be okay for the most part. We actually have a really strong high pressure sitting off the East Coast. And so conditions are going to be pretty clear, but what that's going to create is because we have a developing cyclone and low pressure off the west, and then high pressure over the east, it's going to create a strong pressure gradient. And that pressure gradient is going to cause maybe some stronger winds for potentially, we're looking at the Cleveland game, maybe the Buffalo game, and maybe even the Packers as well, as games that may be impacted from some of this wind. And Packers as well, we're going to keep an eye, but they may have some showers there. We'll keep an eye on it, but wind looks to be more likely the issue. But we're at this time on Sunday, we don't think there's going to be enough of an impact to put any caution flags out. The other thing we're looking at is there's some remnant tropical moisture over Jacksonville potentially for that game, but we're not really concerned. But the big concern point for us is moving forward from Sunday into Monday. We have our big Monday night game, our NFC East game of the Giants at Philly. And that storm I talked to you about that was developing all over the West Coast, well, it really organized and strengthened over the Midwest. And so we're looking at game time, which is what Mike has on right now. This is the timestamp. This is the time of gameplay. And right now he's highlighting the Philadelphia Eagles stadium location. And it looks like we could have a moderate precipitation event on our hands that we are closely monitoring. So as Saturday and Sunday rolls around, make sure you're keeping active on social media because we will be letting you know more about that game and what the conditions may be. Mike, what do you with that potential? I don't think there's much we want to talk about for Sunday because it doesn't look like there's anything significant at this time. But what are you maybe concerned about for Monday?
Yeah, I mean, so with regards to the forecast here, I mean, there's a slug of moisture that seems to be along the warm front here, and it's going to be tricky with the timing, right? As we always do, we're trying to predict a time period of 3 to 5 hours, and to make to really see those significant impacts from rain events, we want to see the precipitation rates quite heavy, which it looks like it's going to be close to the start of the game, but there's a chance that the rain starts to move out of the area as the game goes on, right? So this is why we're not throwing out an extreme flag at this point, because there's that chance that the game starts to dry out as things go on. But for impacts now on production, the one thing that you have to keep in mind right now is there's an injury in New York. And that Daniel Jones is doubtful to play this game. And you know what that means, right? It's Big Eli back in New York here. So
I'm ready.
Eli Manning is projected to be the starter here. And he's coming off cold, right? When was the last time Eli's played, Sean? It's been weeks.
I mean, more than that. I mean, Daniel Jones took over, I think, week 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Against Tampa Bay.
So it's been over 10 weeks.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, Daniel Jones has been playing a while. Eli was benched fairly early in the season. So yeah, he's like, to your point, he hasn't seen any game action in months.
Right. So there are analysts out there in the fantasy community that are projecting that the Giants offense should do better under Eli Manning rather than Daniel Jones. And that you start to wonder about if you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles defense like I am in my playoff matchup. So I did look into Eli Manning's statistics, right? So these are over his career, he's played in 15 games where there was precipitation, right? The career average yards per game, 243 with a 1.5 TD to interception ratio. In games where there's rain, and this is a sample size of 15 games, he's getting up there in age. His yards per game drops to 216 and a half. So that's literally a 25-yard reduction per game. And he also, the most striking thing, right? So when all the folks starting the Philadelphia Eagles defense with Daniel Jones there, Jones has had a significant fumbling problem, right? So everyone's thinking, hey, we're going to get some points here, maybe a touchdown off of a fumble from Daniel Jones. Well, Eli Manning in these 15 games where there's weather has fumbled 12 times. So he's no gem or diamond to speak of as well in the weather. Coming off cold here, I think it's okay to play your Philadelphia Eagles defense still. I'm still playing them, but you have to be a little bit concerned about the passing game in a little bit, I guess you could say, in New York, because the rain might play an impact, but we also saw Philadelphia's secondary is not the greatest. So it's one of these things where you're balancing a weather impact versus a mediocre to not so good defense.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to really put your playoff chances on Eli, who's coming off not playing for weeks, in a potentially rain event that he's already proven in the rain he's not a subpar quarterback? I don't know. I'm not playing Slayton. I'm not playing Sterling Shepard. I'm not playing Golden Tate.
Evan Ingram's coming back too.
What's that?
Evan Ingram is
Evan Ingram. I mean, that's going to be a little bit. I mean, and we would have to see closer to game time. If it's going to be a washout, I'm not playing Evan Ingram either. If it looks like things can lighten up a bit, that's a potential because Eli Manning has proven he does like to go to the tight end. So, that may be a consideration. But right now, I'm trying to stay away from pass catchers.
Yeah.
I think Philadelphia is going to get some turnovers here, whether that be a fumble or an interception. I think that's almost inevitable in this game. As far as the Eagles are concerned, I was looking at Carson Wentz, who's been in the league since 2016. He's an anomaly. He does not seem to be impacted very much by weather, whether that be precipitation or wind. His QBR is still fairly high, actually, in precipitation games. It's a 98, and in warm games like nice weather, mild to warm weather, it's around 88 or 97. So actually, he's higher in a precipitation game. His completion percentage is higher, and his passing yards are higher as well. So it's and we usually don't see this. Usually we see quarterback play diminish, as we went over in the whirlwind, where every quarterback was pretty much below expectation.
Right.
So I'm not as concerned with Carson Wentz. I have him in every single one of my leagues, and I am playing him in every single one of my leagues, especially against a Giants secondary, which proved against Aaron Rodgers that cannot, defend themselves out of a paper bag. So I am playing. I'm playing Carson Wentz. I'm also excited about Miles Sanders. Jordan Howard does not look like he's going to play. Miles Sanders played, I think, around 80 to 85% of snaps
last week.
And he may get some dump offs if the weather's not good and it's harder for the receivers to get downfield efficiently if that's the case. So I think he's got some upside too.
Yeah, and we just saw Alshon Jeffrey come off a really impressive game, right? I mean, I think Wentz's struggles over the last few weeks has been because he hasn't had any wideouts to throw to, right? Now we see one of his favorite targets, Alshon Jeffrey, come back. I believe he went over 100 yards and had a touchdown. So he had a great game. And it sounds like, Sean, that you would feel confident in starting Alshon again this week for your playoff match.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and I can't agree with you more in your point that Carson Wentz did struggle for a while. I mean, he was out Alshon, he was out Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
Nelson Aguilar. There was some receivers in and out, and he was struggling. He was playing some tougher defenses. But with all his pass catchers back except Deshaun Jackson, you have Zach Ertz, you have Goddard there. And the Giants, again, just can't cover, especially in weather. I'm very confident in all the offensive players for the Eagles.
Which is bad news for me because I'm playing Sean in our matchups, and from the sounds of it, he's starting Carson Wentz against me. So
I am, but you also have Miles Sanders.
That's right. Well, yeah, the news about Jordan Howard not playing contact yet, that's still good news for Miles Sanders owners because we've seen a little bit of a shift in the running game there. When J.J. got signed, he seemed to be getting some of the work there, but last week it kind of seems like the Eagles have moved away from J.J. a little bit and started to lean more on their rookie running back.
Yeah, I mean, he's played well. He's been efficient. He's good out of the pack. He's proven he's a good pass catcher when they need him to be. He's shifty. He hasn't been the most efficient runner at times, but he gets the job done when he needs to, and they're getting more confident in him.
Yeah. So I think that's what we have for the weather report here and our breakdown on the games. It's been a great season so far. The Fantasy Football Weather Guys, it's a learning experience for us trying to figure out how to provide this information to you guys and also keep you engaged, right? We know talking about statistics and sometimes weather, if you're not a weather nerd, like, a lot of people are, it can get kind of boring. So we're here to try to get this information out to fantasy football community so you guys can make these decisions in a way that you feel confident. And we want you to win your playoff matchup. We want the best here.
Exactly. And we also just want to appreciate and say thank you for the support. We got a ton of questions coming in last week about people concerned with the weather. So what that also tells us is people care about this stuff. Not only do people care, but it also has an influence. I mean, of the 5 games that were played, every single one had substantial influences. People are bringing this stuff up. They're concerned about it. They want to know more. And so that's our job. Our job is to try to get you the fantasy related information with regards to weather. So we're getting there, and we really appreciate those of you who have supported us along our journey. And hopefully for you have a couple more games here as you continue to hopefully succeed in the playoffs.
Yeah, good luck in the playoffs, guys. We're like Sean mentioned, we want you guys to ask us questions here. We're here to help you with your start-sit decisions, and our interaction through Twitter is where it seems to be the most easiest and convenient for everyone. That being said, we actually did get a question, Sean, on Twitter from a user here, Sing with Tweets, and it's a question about who would you start, Kyle Allen or Mitchell Trubisky?
Kyle, well, neither of those games have any weather-related impacts.
Exactly. That's what I told him. I said, listen, there's no weather impacts here. So
Cowboys Bears is going to be Thursday here, and we're not expecting any weather to impact them. And then the Panthers are at the Falcons, which is a dome game.
Yeah.
I'm honestly going Allen if I had to play. I'm going Allen. The Falcons have been spotty on defense. They've had a couple good games, a couple bad games. I don't know what to expect from them. But I think, the Panthers are going to be fighting here. They're in a dome game, which I prefer, regardless if there's any weather. When you start to get winter here in Chicago and things get a little bit colder, it's a little more comfortable playing in a dome. And Trubisky, I don't trust him against a middle tier.
Coming from a man who lives in Chicago.
I don't. I think the Cowboys, they could potentially show up and shut Trubisky down. Not that I'm expecting him to completely flop, but I think the likelihood of Allen succeeding here is definitely higher.
Yeah, something to consider. I think so. Rob Rivera, the coach of the Panthers, was fired this week, right? So you have to wonder how the interim coach is going to step in and handle the offense. Is it still going to be a everything to McCaffrey type of environment? So this is something that you have to consider for downside when you are doing your DFS lineups. I mean, I've been living or dying by McCaffrey every week. He's got that 20 on DraftKings, $10,500. May have dropped a couple hundred this past week, but it's expensive. And now there's a little bit of risk involved that we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. So I'm still starting him. The matchups is not bad for McCaffrey, but I'm worried about it. This one of the, you might want to have a little bit more variance in your DFS lineups.
And Atlanta's picked it up a little bit, but over the course of the season, they're around, I think, the 17th ranked. They're the 17th ranked rushing defense with yards against, at least. Just that metric is yards against, giving up around 108 yards per game. So I'm confident with McCaffrey here. I think if you're an interim coach, you're going with where you know you're going to succeed, and that's going to be to McCaffrey. But with that being said, he's also a good pass catcher, so Allen may benefit from that.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, that's all we got for this week, week 14. We're looking forward to it. Make sure to keep up to date on our social media outlets on Twitter, Facebook. It's at FFWeatherguys. And as you know, also for anyone watching the YouTube stream, please click the subscribe button. I know Colin's going to be so happy that I mentioned this out here. We gained a good amount of subscriptions last week, so we're going to keep pumping these videos. We're going to break up those videos into important segments, and we're going to provide that content. So, Sean, good luck in your matchups, except against me.
I was going to say the same thing to you. Good luck in whatever other leagues, but in our matchup, and this is our ESPN league, which actually I invited Mike into this year, so this is his first year in the league. I really, really hope Miles Sanders kind of flops.
No.
And I really hope you play Tyler Lockett, because that's who Mike was debating playing. And he also picked up. I dropped Jamison Crowder because
he hasn't been done a lot. Yeah.
And Robbie Anderson's taking targets, and Mike picked him up. So we'll see if that comes back to bite me.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll let you guys know in our next episode. All right, guys. Good luck this week. Go win your first round of the playoffs. If you have a bye, enjoy your time off like Colin is.
All right. Have a good week, guys.
All right.